If you're just waking up, we've got a Fox News alert for you right now. U.S. airstrikes have taken out 3 senior ISIS terrorists, including the top aide to ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. He was killed in the terrorist stronghold of Mosul.
All right, many speculate that the president got the news when the Secretary of State John Kerry passed him this note during yesterday's NATO meetings in Wales. He continues those meetings today, trying to both pressure Russia to get out of Ukraine and build a coalition to defeat ISIL.
We're going to bring in Chris Wallace with us now. Chris, does it look like he's actually able to get through and get help in this coalition to fight ISIS and terror?
Well, I don't think it's clear, Elizabeth. A number of countries have said, yes, they're going to join in military efforts, but so far, Britain and France, other countries, it's mostly taken the form of military aid and assistance to the Kurds. But not necessarily that they're going to start flying airstrikes as well. It's certainly good news to hear that we got some of al-Baghdadi's top lieutenants. I wish we'd gotten the top guy himself. Joe Biden talked about sending them to the gates of hell. I suspect if they get there, they'll be ushered right in.
Right. Hey,
the
listen,
easy pass.
The big question was, and we talked a little bit on the radio yesterday, is there a Secretary of Defense, the Intelligence, and the White House on separate pages? And now back at home, we might have a strategy, according to the Defense Department. General Dempsey said this at a town hall on Facebook, said, at the President's direction, we have developed a military strategy with a series of options on how we can initially contain, to continue to disrupt, and ultimately defeat ISIL. So do we have a strategy?
We'll see. I mean, obviously, we'll find out when they decide whether or not they're going to go across the border into Syria. It's terrific that we were able to get them in Mosul, but the fact is, because they have the protection of this non-existent border in Syria and can just scurry back there because we have kind of kept our, at least one arm tied behind our back, the question is, are we going to strike them? They have a lot of targets. Their main headquarters is in northern Syria, a lot of their training camps. We believe the hostages, American and other foreign hostages, were being held there. And their supply lines, of course, are pretty exposed across the Syrian border. So are we going to do that or not? We'll see. It's interesting. He talked about the fact that we have a strategy or options for the president to decide on. The real question here has never been whether there are options and a strategy at the Pentagon. It's been whether or not the president is going to adopt it.
Sure, exactly. And that could be one of the reasons. You know, when the videos have come out of where these Americans are beheaded, if you watch what is available online, it is despicable and it is disgusting, and you see it and you're so affected. And then we got our President of the United States. He's so cautious, some would say aloof in some instances. Maybe that's one of the reasons Americans now are giving him very bad grades. Right now, according to the Gallup poll, the 3-day rolling average, he has now tied his all-time low Gallup number. Only 38%, Chris, of the people in the United States approve of the job the Commander-in-Chief is doing.
Well, I don't know that it means, it's interesting, I don't know that it means that people are rushing to get into a war, because when asked on specifically on foreign policy, they don't approve of Obama's foreign policy. On the other hand, they aren't itching to get into a war again in the Middle East.
Yeah, but they want somebody with a plan.
If I may, I think the thing that is upsetting them so much is the idea of weakness, that they don't like the idea of America and the American president being pushed around, whether it's by al-Baghdadi in the Middle East, whether it's by Putin on the Russia-Syria border. So I think it's that weakness that is upsetting people. And Brian and I talked about it yesterday. You have Elizabeth Warren. You don't get much further to the left in the Democratic Party than Elizabeth Warren, and she did an interview yesterday or the day before in which she talked tougher than the President of the United States and talked about destroying ISIS. Well, when Elizabeth Warren is to your right, you've got an issue if you're the commander-in-chief.
Well, you also have an issue if the American people don't trust that you're convicted, you understand and believe that we should be leading the way here. You know, when you look back to 2007 and what President George W. Bush said about Iraq, and hear it now, it is so relevant that getting out too early, getting out the wrong way in Iraq could lead us to facing a much more dangerous enemy today. And when you hear it now, it'll give you chills. Take a listen.
I know some in Washington would like us to start leaving Iraq now. To begin withdrawing before our commanders tell us we are ready would be dangerous for Iraq, for the region, and for the United States. It would mean surrendering the future of Iraq to al-Qaeda. It would mean that we'd be risking mass killings on a horrific scale. It would mean we allow the terrorists to establish a safe haven in Iraq to replace the one they lost in Afghanistan. It would mean increasing the probability that American troops would have to return at some later date to confront an enemy that is even more dangerous.
All that happened exactly like he projected, and that was prior, in the midst of the surge, trying to get support.
Yeah, I was going to say, you don't even have to go nearly that far, because at that point, the president was talking about a surge. We had over 100,000 troops in Iraq. When he left, he had negotiated the status of forces agreement to leave a much smaller force, maybe 10,000 or 15,000 there,
yep,
as a kind of force to stabilize the Iraqi government, to stabilize the Iraqi army. And that's the one that President Obama failed to work out a deal with Nouri al-Maliki, and as a result we took all of our troops out and things kind of went to hell. So you don't have to have a surge. Sure. You could have had a much smaller force that the Pentagon was calling for, as I say, 10 or 15,000. We still have over 30,000 troops in Korea, and it's been a half a century. So just because you have troops on the ground doesn't mean they're in a combat role. It's kind of an insurance policy, a policy that we decided we didn't need anymore.
Well put.
Okay, Chris, that's looking back. Now let's look forward. Who are you going to be sitting next to on Sunday morning?
Well, a couple of very interesting people on just exactly this subject. First of all, Mitt Romney. We'll talk about this. He's got a very tough editorial in the Washington Post today,
yes,
in which he talks about weakness in foreign policy and what it gets you. We'll also talk to Mike McCall, the chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee. And, of course, the big concern is, could some of those American fighters who go over to ISIS, could they come back and launch another 9/11 as we approach the 13th anniversary? So I think it'll be a very interesting Fox News Sunday.
We'll be tubeside. Chris Wallace, thank you.
All right. Mitt Romney calling for building up our defense forces again.
Sure did.
Meanwhile, here's Heather with what else is happening in the world.
Yeah, we have some other stuff going on to talk about. A brand new glimpse into some heart-stopping moments. The moment that a great white shark tossed two women from their kayaks, and it comes from the 911 call that they made from the water with the shark.
Oh, help! I was just on the phone with somebody. We're stuck in the water and there's the shark.
Ma'am, where is the shark?
I don't know. He bumped me out of my boat. Please, I'm floating away. Please, please, please. I'm scared.
Well, both women were rescued. The shark leaving behind